How do I like living in Florida? Like for real? Like for real, for real? What's going on, everyone? Dave K here today with Do I Like Living in Florida? An honest review here and thoughts. I'm going to give you my ranking on Florida, how it stacks up compared to some of the other places that I live. Just a full deep dive in all the different places that I've been to, but specifically Florida and how it compares to some of those other places. And if you'd like to see me make a video like this for some of those other places that I've lived, other states or other cities, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As someone who's interested in finance and numbers and that sort of thing, I'm going to start us off with the cost of living and the state income tax. Now, you have to appreciate the low cost of living and the no state income tax that Florida offers. As of the last time I checked, I think there are only 7 states that have no state income tax, which is really nice. If you work in that state, then the money that you make within that state is 0% state income tax. So yay for that. Nice feature. A lot of the other places that I've worked and lived have had state income tax, and of course California and San Francisco is renowned for their cost of living and their state income tax. So you need to consider that as well if you're thinking about places to live. Of course, the expenses of living there do matter. Now, you can take this into a calculation and assessment and say, well, if I'm making twice as much, maybe in San Francisco, then I'm just as comfortable as that we're making only half of that in Florida. Maybe you're saying that to yourself, okay, well, you know, I have that going for me. Didn't change my shirt. I didn't change it. I just realized I didn't change my shirt. I think we're good. I think we're good with the shirt. So you may factor that in and say, okay, cost of living, San Francisco, I get it. Florida's good for that, as well as a lot of other places. First of all, it's not just a Florida thing, but also if I made twice as much in San Francisco, would I be just as comfy? So let me keep diving into those points here as well. Another thing I love about Florida is the weather. Now, this is indeed a personal preference question. You may say, Dave, I like it cold, and, you know, I like it dry as well, maybe. You know, that might be your thing. So, it really does depend what you like. Personally, I like heat. I know a lot of people get shocked when they hear this, but I kind of like humidity as well. I like it not too dry in the air. I can appreciate the occasional rain and that kind of thing. So those are features to appreciate about the climate. I definitely see myself as kind of a southern person, at least in terms of settling in the long term. Like to be somewhere more south where it's a little bit warmer. Now, you can compare, for example, San Francisco to over like Washington, D.C. area, and it does get a lot colder in the wintertime, I feel like, in the Washington, D.C. area. So it could be worse in that sense in terms of Northern California, but I like it warmy warm, as warm as you can make it for me. Take me down there, like Florida and that sort of thing. So definitely appreciate the weather in Florida. Another factor, of course, to consider in the fact that I like living in Florida is the things to do. There is so much to do in Florida. There are a good number of restaurants and shopping malls, but of course, who could forget, especially in the Central Florida area, all of the theme parks to see. Of course, if you didn't know I was going to name that one, you check out some of my previous videos. There's a lot of theme park stuff there. So you've got to love all of the things to do as well. Again, from shopping, malls, food, and of course those theme parks. Now the theme parks are something you can't necessarily find as many theme parks in one area as here, but you can find a lot of other states and a lot of other cities that do offer similar quantities of food. If you're saying, oh, you know, I want some really great food, I'll dive a little bit deeper into food here in a minute. Now for some of the things that I don't like quite so much about Florida, and I'm primarily speaking to kind of around Central Florida right now, around that Orlando area. That being said, I've also lived in Tampa for a little bit of time. It was a few months, pretty shortly after I graduated from school. I lived in Tampa, so that was fun as well. But I'm going to speak to some of the things I don't like quite so much in Florida, and one of those is accessibility. And you may say, Dave, what do you mean accessibility? There's roads here just like anywhere else. And I'm not going to argue with that, of course. There are indeed roads here. There are ways to get around on the road. But I feel like it's more challenging to get around in terms of, let's say, hypothetically, you know, there's this guy that you know, and he doesn't have a car. Oh my gosh. Then he finds, hypothetically, this particular peculiar guy finds it's a little bit more challenging to get from point A to point B than it might be in some other cities. So a lot of the cities that I've been to have been a little bit more walkable, and even if they're not walkable, it seems like a lot of the destinations you might want to go are a little bit closer by. So whether that's a restaurant, or you're going to meet up with some friends at some other sort of venue, the beach, or that kind of thing, some outdoor activity, natural park and nature, that kind of thing, I feel like a lot of the places that I try to go to can be a little bit further off in terms of the costs of a ride-sharing app, whether that's a Lyft or some other ride-sharing app. So accessibility in that sense is challenging. Now, diving a little bit further into that accessibility piece, we of course have the driving and kind of that, what that looks like out here. And traffic and drivers can be challenging at times. I've lived in a lot of different cities, and I have seen more busy cities when it comes to traffic. But in terms of drivers, I feel like I've had kind of most of my driving scares in the Florida area, where the drivers are a little bit more kind of scary, again, kind of doing some crazy moves that I'm like, uh-oh, you know, kind of scared of that sort of thing, as opposed to a lot of the other states that I've lived in that sense. So I'm not saying there's more traffic on the streets, but there is a surprisingly good amount of traffic in Florida, and the drivers can be challenging at times. And then another thing that I'm not a huge fan of in the Florida area, but I kind of have to accept this if I'm saying I like it hot and humid, is bugs. That's right, bugs. Bugs are a real thing out here. Of course, there are bugs in most areas, most places you go. You'll see different kinds of bugs, but definitely lots of challenging, irritating, flying type bugs out here. Mosquitoes are some of my least favorite type of bugs, and that's definitely a challenge in the Florida area in terms of mosquitoes. But again, you just kind of have to deal with it if you're more into that kind of climate. If you like it warmer, hot, and humid, you just kind of you have to accept that there's going to be some bugs around. Now, to speak a little bit more to that food point I touched on a little bit earlier, I want to dive deeper into that one. There are a lot of food options out here, and I can appreciate that. But sometimes I'm looking for some amazing particular types of food. For example, maybe I just have to do more exploring. Gotta give this credit, you know, credit where credit's due. Maybe I just gotta try more. Haven't gotten out as much as maybe I'd like. Maybe I should. And so I'm going to be hopefully doing more of that in the future. But in terms of some of the amazing food types that I'm looking for example, I used to love in Texas some of the different barbecue and some of the Tex-Mex. And although there is Chuy's, which I can appreciate, and Tijuana Flats, which has been a great new experience for me as well, there are still a few places that I miss in terms of dining in Texas for Tex-Mex and barbecue, including Torchy's as one example. And there's some fantastic food, for example, back in San Francisco in terms of some fancy quality eateries that I haven't run into too much around here as well. But there is some great food in the theme parks. If you go to some of the theme parks, you can get some of that kind of fancy, delicious food items as well. So there's trade-offs there. There is some good food, but there's also certain types of food that I'm kind of missing or I'm lacking. There could be more of. For example, Boudin Bakery. You can't beat that in the San Francisco Bay Area in terms of kind of like a bread bakery shop, you know, kind of like a Panera, that sort of thing. Can't find that out here, unfortunately, either. Obviously, that one's less likely to be here, but there's a lot of places that I miss. From Whataburger, I've got a whole video about my favorite foods and that kind of thing. You can check that one out if you like. But I'm missing a lot of those food items here as well. Now, another factor to consider is the people. And you have to think about not only the kind of age groups and that sort of thing when you're looking at people in an area, but also kind of the personality of people. For example, in Austin, when I was living in the Austin area in Texas, I found some of the friendliest people. You know, people were always welcoming and friendly, very open. It seemed like everyone would be willing to stop and talk to different people and answer questions and that sort of thing. Versus in San Francisco and New York, these are some of the places where maybe people are on the more short and abrupt side. And, you know, this is kind of a trait you pick up, is sometimes you just kind of get in the habit of not interacting with people and that sort of thing kind of on your way. And so it kind of encompasses those cities as a vibe as a whole, in my opinion. So I feel like Florida is okay, and that one, again, kind of sits in the middle ground. I think I like Texas more when it comes to the people front, but I do more kind of appreciate that open, kind of warm vibe. But, you know, it depends what you're in different places, this is what you're going to get. So that's an honest review in terms of people. somewhere in the middle. So, you know, it really depends on the person as well and where they came here from, because it does seem like a lot of people who live in Florida, by the way, move to Florida. It's a popular place to move to in terms of some of the articles that I've read. You know, a lot of people want to be moving to the Florida area, which is nice as well. But it does depend where people came from in terms of their personalities. So an overall rating. Dave, overall rating, how would you rate Florida on a scale of 0 to 10? I want to give Florida about an 8. 8, okay. Dave, why do you say 8 for Florida? Well, I think Florida's good. Florida sits in some of my top tier places to live. Now, does that mean it's the #1 place that I see myself living? I don't know, you know. I think I've touched on, and you may have seen this in other videos, I touched on really wanting to travel, to see more places, to go more places, maybe for one, to figure out where I want to settle down long term, but also to just be able to experience new places and check them out while I'm on the younger side. So I think that'd be amazing in terms of kind of being based somewhere. How about not? How about just being based everywhere? But of course, if you are thinking about, I've got to be based somewhere, I do have a lot of tendencies that say there's a lot of things I liked about Texas, and that Austin area had some great people, some of my favorite food, still a very low cost of living and low state income tax or no state income tax. So a lot of traits I really like about Texas and the Austin area kind of puts that pretty close to that #1 for me. Florida's got some great parts as well, and I put it in the top tier, but I'm not sure it can surpass Texas for me and some of the places I've been in Texas in terms of food, people, and all that sort of thing. So those are my initial thoughts. Do I like living in Florida? How would I rate Florida in terms of a 0 to 10 scale? An honest review to let you know what I think about living in Florida. I like it, but I can't say I'm absolutely forever in love with it. Whereas, again, part of me is like, you know, to be able to spend a little bit more time in Texas, I gotta say there were some really nice things there. Again, food being one of those top contenders. So, and of course the weather is fantastic out there as well, a lot like it is here, but it depends what kind of weather you like. What do you think? Do you agree with my thoughts? Are you shocked to hear what I'm saying? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, if you haven't already, consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell for more fun and silly adventures. And I'm looking forward to sharing more with you again real soon. Until next time, play on.